Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Storytime. My name is Charlie Malone, and every week I try to share a story that I enjoy and that I hope that you will enjoy. And this week we are reading the classic The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. And it's a small book, so as I'm reading it, I'll bring the pictures up close so that you can see them. Because Beatrix Potter is the one who drew the pictures, and she's just a wonderful writer and a wonderful illustrator. So let's see what happens. The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. Beatrix Potter, when she was a girl, she started painting and drawing animals very early on, and she loved to watch animals in their environment. So she has very realistic pictures, but they're also fun. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden." Seems like there's 3 little bunnies that are listening to Mama and 1 who is not. "Your father had an accident there, and he was put into a pie by Mr. McGregor." So he was put into the pie by Mrs. McGregor. "Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out." Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. And there she goes with her basket. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty sometimes, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First he ate some lettuces and some French beans, and then ate some radishes. I see in this picture that he's eating some carrots. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. Parsley is a good thing to eat if you're feeling a little stomach achy. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Oh. Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Oh no. Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He'd lost one of his shoes among the cabbages. And the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have gotten away altogether if he had not unfortunately run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Oh no. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. "You can do it, Peter." Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve, like a big basket, which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter. But Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind. rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not been a watering can and had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. Achoo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time. And tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Wow, that was a close call. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright. He had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can. Oh, what a poor bedraggled bunny. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in the wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the woods. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him, and Peter began to cry. I don't know if the mouse shook her head or was just going. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still. But now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. Benjamin Bunny is another story that you can read that Beatrix Potter wrote. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, and Peter scuttered underneath the bushes. But presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow, peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. You see the gate way, way in the back of that picture? Try to find it with your eyes. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go along a straight walk behind some blackcurrant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Yay! Peter escaped. He's free. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. And I was talking to some children whether that's a scary scarecrow, and they said that, well, because it doesn't have a head, it is kind of scary. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree, his home. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in 2 weeks. I'm sorry to say that Peter did not feel very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime. Chamomile tea is very good if you're feeling a little sick in your stomach or if you've had too exciting of a day. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. That was very tasty and delicious. The end. Thanks for sharing that story with me, and I'll see you next time. And until then, I'll see you outside. Bye for now.